Hi, it's Tim again from dominiinglês.com.br. In the last video we were talking about the history of the United States and the events that led up to the American Revolution. And as I was telling you, the colonists were fed up with all the taxes that were being imposed upon them by the British Crown. Eventually the British Parliament repealed most of those taxes except for a tax on tea, with which they were trying to force the colonists to buy only British tea. The colonists reacted and refused to unload the tea from ships in various harbors. But in 1773, there were 3 ships in the Boston harbor which were going to unload their cargo of tea. A number of colonists in Boston, who belonged to a group of men who called themselves the Sons of Liberty, dressed up as Indians, went on these ships, smashed the crates, and dumped the contents into the ocean or into the harbor. This famous event is known as the Boston Tea Party. This infuriated the British, and the king sent troops to occupy Boston. They declared martial law on the city and suspended all civil rights and liberties in the city. They also banned importation of goods into Boston except for products which were processed by the British customs. The colonists reacted over time by forming organized militia to resist the British soldiers, who were known as the Redcoats. The settlers formed groups called Minutemen, who were regular civilians who could be armed and ready to fight on a minute's notice. These Minutemen consistently harassed the British soldiers with guerrilla tactics, until the point where the British government couldn't take it anymore. Finally, on April 18, 1775, the British general in Boston decided to send a punitive expedition of British soldiers to destroy guns and ammunition which the colonists had stored in the town of Concord, just outside of Boston. They also planned to arrest Samuel Adams and John Hancock, 2 of the key leaders of the patriotic movement. A very well-known event in the history of the United States is when a man named Paul Revere and a couple of his friends rode out of Boston in the middle of the night to alert Samuel Adams and John Hancock and to warn the Minutemen that the British were coming. Paul Revere had also arranged for lanterns to be lit in the Old North Church steeple. 1 lantern would be lit if the British were coming by land, and 2 lanterns if the British were coming by sea. 1 if by land, 2 if by sea, as written in a famous poem. By the way, this midnight ride of Paul Revere and his friends inspired the wonderful poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow called Paul Revere's Ride. Most Americans know this poem by heart, or at least parts of it, and it starts like this: "Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year." Paul Revere and the other riders were able to awake the Minutemen, who were ready to fight in Lexington and then later on in Concord. But that I'll have to tell you in another video. So stay tuned. Bye-bye.